I feel really good about myself that I already have to do my first retraction. I remember the statistic was actually 54% said they were victims of violence. I apologize. Thank you for the correction. It's still a huge number, but I must have done that. Sometimes I add things wrong. So the other thing that we were, I think I want to go into as we talk about creating a culture of dignity in terms of the environment that we create is something that I think is also missed in a lot of services, which is just a fundamental commitment to honesty, which is ironic. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually true that I have met a lot of people who are really hesitant to just tell people who are homeless the truth about the services they offer, about the situation. Like I found that like a lot of people don't like to admit when they're wrong about something, like volunteers-wise or staff-wise or organizations-wise. We end up feeling like somehow the person that we're serving maybe on some level owes us a little bit or something like that. And so we end up not committing to being honest with the person and just admitting, yeah, I kind of like I screwed up there, or I got that wrong. Or I'm really sorry it must be really frustrating that you have to wait a really long time for the item. Like at New York City Relief, we again, like I mentioned earlier, we do socks, and we have hundreds of people who come for socks because it's a real need. And we give out really nice socks. That's again, part of the goal of creating a culture of dignity is giving away high quality items. So that's what we try to do. And we get hundreds of people who come and they line up, and instead of just like, some of you have experienced it probably, where instead of just like dishing out socks to everybody, like the gun at the Madison Square Garden like during the quarter, they shoot the t-shirt into the crowd. Like it's not what we do. Like we try to create an experience where we have a one-on-one, like one person, again, just having the dignity of choice, choosing what they want, and then having a brief conversation with somebody. And what I've found is that sometimes people will get really frustrated with the fact that they have to wait for the socks. They'll come up and they'll say, oh, I want to put my name on the list. But they'll be like 50 names ahead of them, and they'll be like, man, this is terrible. I'm really angry. I'm really frustrated. I have somewhere to be. I got things to do, and I gotta wait. And I just want a friggin' pair of socks. And in that moment, I could be like, well, sorry, buddy. We're giving away socks for free here. What you whining for? Or I could be like, well, tough luck, pal. Or I could say, well, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. We have a list. This is how it works. That's the way it is. Or I could be empathetic to the fact that this is a person who's really frustrated right now because if they're willing to wait for 40, they have to wait for a pair of socks. I usually don't have to wait for a pair of socks. And it's a legitimate thing to be frustrated about. And I'll say, look, I'm really sorry that this is actually, that it's frustrating that you have to wait. That's really terrible. I'm sorry. I would be frustrated too. Unfortunately, I don't put the people over I don't put the process over the person, but I still have to keep the process. But I can be honest about the process. I can actually say to the person, hey, here's the thing. We have all of these people who got here ahead of you, and they're all waiting as well, and they all really need a pair of socks as well, and they all understand that this is we have to do a first come, first served basis. But here's the thing, I'm even open to suggestion. Do you have any suggestions? I've asked that. Do you have any suggestions? I'd love your input. Seriously, if someone that we're serving has a better way that we can give the items that we're giving away, if they have a better way, I'm all ears. Because it's not about the process, it's about the people. And if the people can help my process, because again, most everybody understands that there has to be some kind of system. But being honest about that, I think, again, is what helps create the culture around you. The other thing is like just being honest about the fact that you don't quite understand what they're going through. I mean, I think instead of feeling bad that I don't understand, I think, like, I sometimes will say, look, there's no way I could possibly get it. I don't understand. Can you help me? But I'm honest about the fact. Again, this was a lesson I learned doing outreach. We used to walk the streets of Midtown, giving away socks and trying to connect people to shelter and programs and stuff. Without a bus and without anything, without a building, we would just walk the streets with volunteers and meet people and have conversations. And I went into a McDonald's, and I ended up having dinner with 3 new friends who I had met outside McDonald's. And the one person was a woman who started talking to me about her situation, started talking to me, I was listening, just telling me about, she was just talking. And I was drinking my, whatever McDonald's sells, milkshakes and stuff, and listening. And then all of a sudden she started talking about her heroin addiction and how ashamed she was about her heroin addiction. And she was just confessing, and I was just listening, and she was confessing that one of the things she's most ashamed of is that she used drugs with her son. And she was so broken up about that. And now her son was in a rehab program in Phoenix or something, and she was happy that he was getting help, but she was still in the street. And then she kind of paused, and out of nowhere, she goes, do you understand what I'm talking about here? Like, and I know I kind of look the part. I mean, I got the tattoos, I got the hair, I'm the beard, I clearly unkempt, I can't dress myself. And so it's understandable that someone might judge me a little bit, or usually they think I'm in a band of some kind. But which also could lead to drug use. So it was a fair question. So she said, do you have any experience doing that? And I looked at her and I was like, nope. I don't have any experience. And in that moment, I felt very, very, very unprepared and unworthy to be in that conversation. Like, all of a sudden in that conversation, I felt like I was an outsider. And by admitting that I had no history of drug abuse, I could have pivoted and said, yes, but I have other issues that I could talk to you about. Ooh, but I also, I have problems too. And I could have pivoted and tried to sell it somehow. But instead, all I said to her was, no, I don't have any experience with that. And I can't understand what you're dealing with. And she looked at, I can't even explain to you, it was very strange, but in that moment I felt very, like I was in the wrong place. Like, why me? Why am I in this conversation? Because now the truth is out. My whole sales pitch about my, rough checkered past is crumbling before my eyes. I don't have this, my tough exterior is gone. Now she knows I'm a fraud. And I said, I don't, and then she said, well, then why are you even here? Why? But she didn't mean it as a judgment. She meant it as, you don't have a history with this. You don't need to be doing this. Why are you here? Why? She was confused. But it was one of those moments where I realized in that moment that just being honest about the fact that I don't understand what you're dealing with and I don't have a history with that actually didn't make us farther apart. It actually drew us closer together. Because then she was able to say, she had this moment where she realized that in her mind, I could be doing anything I wanted, and I was there talking to her. And maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe there's value in that. So whether you're, maybe you don't have the foggiest idea of what you're doing, volunteering with a homeless ministry or working on staff with an organization that serves men and women who are homeless, and maybe you do. Maybe you have tons of history with it. But either way, I believe that creating a culture where you can just be honest about whatever it is that you are bringing to the table is more powerful than trying to do all the right things and answer all the right questions and do all the right things, say all the right things to get things fixed for the person. Because going back to the quote from Richard Galloway, if the poor are not the problem be solved, but the poor are the heart of God, then you are getting a chance to experience that heart, and you're getting a chance to experience that connection, whether you no matter how you got to that point in time, there you are. And you can be honest about that and not feel bad. Don't feel bad about the fact that you may not have the, and if you do have the history, if you do have an understanding of being homeless, and if you do have an experience in the streets, don't assume that your experience is their experience. Because that's not fair either. Just like it's not fair for the person who has no idea what they're talking about because they've never been there to say, I get where you're coming from. It's actually true that if you have tons of experience, your experience could be very different than the person that you're talking to. So you can't put your experience of homelessness onto that other person's because that's not fair. Because you wouldn't want that person doing that to you. And this is something I've seen a lot, is when sometimes we as human beings, we think that I was able to get to X or Y or Z through this route, which means that you should be able to get to X or Y or Z through the same route, which means that my route out is your route, which means that you should take the route that I took, which means that I have seen a lot of men and women who have experienced homelessness who sometimes bring their own version of prejudice into a conversation with someone who's experiencing homeless currently, just because they are so desperate to help and they want the person to get out of homelessness like they did. And so then they will try and push their route onto the person, and when the person resists, there becomes hostility and frustration. Why won't you just get it? I did. I figured it out. I got out. Why can't you? And there becomes sort of a judgment, and there becomes sort of an us-them dynamic in terms of the way they interact. So on either extreme, you have there's ditches on both sides of the road, right? So either way you can fall into a ditch. So the point of finding that middle ground of saying, look, I don't know what your background is. I don't know. I can't say that I understand, but I'm going to be honest about where I'm at and what I think. But I'm also not going to be a jerk, and I'm not going to be condescending, and I'm not going to be, and I'm not going to tell you how you should do it. At the same time, I'm not going to assume, because I don't have a history, that I have nothing to offer, and you're just going to have to figure it out on your own. Because I don't understand, so sorry, you're on your own, figure it out. So like, there's both extremes that I've seen in terms of volunteering and serving that are super important to just remember as we engage people. I mean, brain. One of my coworkers used to say this, and I think this is really the crux of the issue in terms of the environment that we create, which is that there is no us and them, there's just us. There is no us and them, there's just us. And this is something, if you're going to create a culture, this is something that it's actually sort of I'm going to be contradicting myself a little bit, so bear with me. But one of the things that I believe with all my heart is that if you're going to offer a way towards resources, transformation, towards connections to other services and all that, if the best way to do that is to create an environment where you have the people who are serving and the people being served, where it's not about those doing the serving over here and those being served over here. By like finding a way even to break bread with the people that you're serving, not just serving the people that are eating the bread. Does that make sense? One of the things I've seen in organizations is it's not uncommon, and again, I understand the logistical value to it, but you'll have like volunteers who will eat separately from the people who are being served. And there seems that a lot of times I know there's time constraints. I know there's the people who are serving got to eat too, and you don't want them necessarily. But again, I don't believe the solutions are that binary. I gotta believe that there's a way for us to create a place where the volunteers who are serving, there's always creative solutions, but finding a way for the volunteers to eat with the people that they're serving, and to even eat this, make a rule that the people who are in the house only eat what everyone's eating. Don't bring your takeout dinner into a soup kitchen, right? Don't bring these are, again, because of the us-them dynamic. If you're going to create an us and them dynamic, which will then contradict the culture that I'm talking about in terms of a dignifying culture where everyone feels welcomed and loved and cared for. Does that make sense? I've just seen that a lot where, again, it's totally unintentional and it's not malicious at all, but even just like the cup you're carrying around with you. If every decision that you make as a volunteer or as a staff person or whatever your job is, whatever your role is, if everything that you do will communicate something, if it's a message to the people that you're serving, and if the message that you're trying to communicate is there is no us and them, I don't think that I'm separate from you. If that's the message you're trying to send, then everything you do needs to affirm that reality. Which means that if you're walking around with like, the to-go mug from Starbucks with your triple shot latte in it, and your guests are drinking from the Cambro container of coffee out of styrofoam cups, you have a messaging problem. Because now, it's not malicious, it's not saying you're a bad person or whatever, nothing like that. Please don't hear me saying that. All I'm saying is that if you're going to commit to creating a culture where you walk in the door and you are immediately hit with this ethos of welcome, dignity, equality, and care, then everything you do, every little thing you do, every word, the tone of voice you use, and even the coffee mug you carry in your hand communicates something. And if that's something that it communicates is against the message you're trying to send as a body, then you have a messaging problem and you're going to end up contradicting your message, and it will erode like a slow, like drips of water on rock. It'll just eventually, it'll wear away at your credibility. When the person says, well, you think you're better than me. And you're like, what I do? I don't think I'm better than you. I've had people say, you think you're better than me. I'm like, I'm maybe on some level I subconsciously do. Maybe I'm just have to be honest about that. At the same time, I need to be careful that I'm not subconsciously also doing things and saying things that are communicating that message without actually saying it. That I think I'm better than you. Like I had volunteers who sometimes would like bring pizza to our outreach, and I was like, "What are you doing?" Like, "Oh, I'm just gonna have a bite of pizza." Well, I'm like, "We have soup. That's why we're here." And then they're like, "Well, like run up behind the line and like sneak up and like get their own plate real quick, you know? Like, oh, it's okay. I work here. I'm a volunteer." No, you get in line, just like everybody else. Because even though you serve here and then you work here and you're like, that's the way I feel. I'm like, if you're going to serve with us and we're going to eat together, then you should get in line like everybody else. It's just because everyone's getting in line. It's not because I'm picking on you. It's because you're just like, you were made in the image of God too. I think you're valuable as well. But at the same time, I'm trying to communicate a message to the men and women who are walking in with all of this pain, trauma, struggle, and issue, that they matter, that they are important, that their voice matters. I don't think I'm better, that they have a chance, that's the message I'm trying to send with everything that I do. And if I'm doing something that contradicts that message, it's important for me to be aware of it so that I can get my messaging on, so that people's lives can be transformed. That's the goal. That's the goal. The other thing, yes, sir.
I'm just saying,
please.
You do know that homeless people drink Starbucks coffee.
Yeah, I do know. No, I do know that. I do know that. Absolutely.
And just another thing. I mean, so let's just say that I work at a certain place working with homeless people. So then, if I want to dress a certain way, does that mean that I should not dress how I want to dress because I'm dealing with homeless people? Does that make a difference?
I think it's a matter of scale. So for example, I don't think I have a friend who said I invited to hang out at one of our outreaches, who was going to be visiting donors, and he was going to wear a suit. And he said, I don't know if I want to come to the outreach dressed in my suit. I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. He was trying to consider it. And I told him, I was like, dude, it doesn't really matter that much. However, I think again to the scale, if you're showing up regularly, it's one thing if you're just stopping by and you're just passing through, and it doesn't. I mean, I don't think it matters that much. But again, messaging is about repeated communications. So like if your dress is going to be a distraction, if your dress is going to cause conflict, or like, I think we should find a way to lower, like, to meet people where they are if we can. But at the same time, I don't think, just like you were kind of saying, like I've met many homeless people who wear three-piece suits because they're busting it, trying to, that's what they want to wear. That's great, and they have it, they can wear it. So it's not a matter of saying, just like you said to me, like, homeless people drink Starbucks too. Homeless people dress nice too. So the fact is, it's not really about that as much. But I do think in terms of if it's about overall messaging, I think that it can become a thing if it becomes a distraction. If it starts to send a message that you are other than, then that could be problematic on the whole. But I'm not trying to get caught in the nitpick. I'm using specific examples, but I'm trying not to be nitpicky. I don't want to be legal. I'm not trying to be legalistic. And I apologize if I'm coming across that way. It's not intended. I'm trying to use specific examples to reference broader points. So I don't think it's that important. But I do think it's a messaging thing. So if what you're wearing is a repeated distraction and sets you apart, now it's not about what you're dressing. It's about the message your dress is sending. Which is the same reason why you have dress codes at businesses and in banks, and because if I'm working in finance down on Wall Street wearing my shorts and my flip-flops and my polo shirt, that's sending a message. And I'm good, it may be fine, but if that keeps me from being able to connect to my clients, I'm going to go broke, and I'm not going to be at all very, very good at my job. And my company will probably say, you need to go home and change. I think it depends on what you're specifically looking at. But I don't think it's that big of, again, not trying to be legalistic. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I was just wondering.
No, it's a great question. It's a fair question.
I'm sorry. Make a short point to Isaiah's, about the dressing.
Yeah.
It seems to me that if you were once homeless and you're not anymore, and you're a volunteer or a staff member, should you not be, I don't want to say setting an example, but I mean, I think if you're not homeless anymore and you're working with homeless, I don't think you need to dress like they do, sometimes in rags.
Again, I would say case by case and point by point. I don't want to get bogged down on I think that's, again, no, it's fine. I just think organizationally, that's an organizational decision that you have to decide what message you're sending. But it's, I mean, honestly, our organization, I am ridiculously informal. I am just an informal, I have staff who are working, getting soup I'm covered in soup at the end of the day. Literally, I came home from my first day of outreach. I crawled into bed with my wife. She said, go get a shower. You smell like garbage. And I said, I am very sorry, I should do that. She is also, I have done other outreaches where I've come back and I have had all manner of things on me, and my wife has said, you are literally taking your clothes off before you come in the house. Because I was just, I'm shameless in the sense that I'm also sitting on the, I'm so intentional about making sure that I'm trying to communicate the right thing in terms of how I'm doing what I'm doing, that I will intentionally